Okay, so for your test, you're going to have a formula sheet of all the derivative rules from this unit. It's currently page 29 in your packet, so make sure everything is copied exactly. Okay, so I'm going to start and do the first 3 problems here. When we take the derivative, e to the x is just e to the x. We bring the coefficient down, and then the x squared just becomes plus 2x. For number 2, for y prime, the coefficient stays, and then we have an a to the x. So that's going to be times a to the x ln of a, and then minus, and then that's the normal power rule, so we have minus 3x squared. Now for number 3, let me just give myself some space. For number 3, I'm going to rewrite that problem. Instead of 3 to the x divided by 3, I'm going to make it 1/3 3 to the x. So when we take the derivative, the 1/3 is our coefficient, and that stays. And then we're going to have a to the x ln a. Okay, so for number 4, for your derivatives, again, the coefficient's going to stay, and then we have a to the x ln a plus the coefficient a to the x ln a. For 5, let me change color so it stands out. For 5, the derivative of 10 is 0. I'm going to bring down the negative, and the derivative of ln of x is 1/x. Okay, now for 6, when we have our derivative of x squared, that's 2x plus 5, and then the derivative of cosine is negative sine x. I'm going to rewrite the second piece here as negative 5 sine x. Okay, now for 7, the letters are all coefficients. So when you find the derivative, the coefficient stays. Derivative of e to the x is e to the x. The 2 comes down. And then the derivative of c as a constant is 0. Okay, for 8, when we take the derivative, the coefficient stays. Then we have a to the x ln a. And for 9, the last one on this page, the derivative, coefficient, derivative of sine is cosine. The derivative of negative 5x is negative 5. Okay, now for 10, the derivative 2x is the power rule, the 2 comes down. 4 is the derivative of 4x, and then the ln of x is 1/x. Now this last piece I'm going to combine and make it negative 3/x. And you can do that because 3 is over 1, so you multiply numerators, multiply denominators. Now for 11, we need the chain rule because we have a function inside another function. So to take the derivative, we're going to take the normal derivative, that's 100 x squared plus 1 to the 99, times the derivative of x squared plus 1, which is 2x. So combining that, we can multiply 100 and 2x and get 200x, x squared plus 1 to the 99th. 12 and 13 are similar in that they're e to the u and a to the u, not just a to the x or e to the x. So we have to, when we take our derivative, it's e to that power times the derivative of the power. So that's going to be negative 0.2 e to the negative 0.2x. Same thing for 13. We've got u prime, which is the derivative of the exponent, is 5 times a to the u. Oop, that's supposed to be a 3. ln of a. You can't multiply the 5 and 2 because the 2 has an exponent, so we just leave that be. Okay, so now for 14, coefficient stays, derivative of sine is cosine, and then times u prime, which is 2, plus the coefficient stays, the derivative of cosine is negative sine, times the derivative of 4x. So now we can combine algebraically. 6 times 2, that's 12 cosine 2x. And then we have negative 1 times 3 times 4, so that's minus 12 sine of 4x. Okay, so then for 15, when we have ln of a function, which is ln of u, our derivative is going to be u prime over u. So the derivative of e to the x plus 1 is e to the x over e to the x plus 1. You can't cancel these e to the x's because of this addition in the denominator. Okay, and for 16, we've got the derivative of e to the x, which is e to the x, and the derivative of sine is cosine. Now 17, this is a product rule. You have x squared plus 3 times e to the x. So I'm going to set that up, x squared plus 3, e to the x. Individually, I need the derivatives, because then the product rule says f times g prime, so that's e to the x times x squared plus 3, plus the other two. So now that's going to be 2x e to the x. This is the final derivative then for number 17 using the product rule. For 18, we need the quotient rule. So just so I remind myself, low, d high. Okay, so I know the denominator is going to be 5x plus 2 squared, or times itself. So then my numerator is 5x plus 2 times the derivative of the numerator minus the numerator times the derivative of the denominator. So now we have to simplify the numerator, distribute the 3, and I'm going to distribute the negative and the 5, so that's negative 15x minus 5. So when I combine like terms in the numerator, 15x minus 15x, and then 6 minus 1 gives us a final answer of positive 1 divided by 5x plus 2 times itself. Now for 19, we need the product rule again, because we have x, which is a function, and e to the negative x squared, which is a function. So I'm actually going to give myself space. Okay, so for 19, for the product rule, the first function is x, and that's multiplied by e to the negative x squared. So when I take the derivative of each piece, the derivative of x is 1, and now I need the chain rule for e to the negative x squared. So that's the derivative of the exponent times e to the original exponent. So now the product rule says I'm going to multiply these and add that with this multiplication of these. So when I have x times this one, that's going to be negative 2x squared e to the negative x squared plus 1 times e to the negative x squared. Okay, so now for number 20, the denominator has a greatest common factor. So in the denominator, if I factor out an x, I can then simplify, and we're left with 3x divided by 5x plus 7. Now it makes doing the quotient rule a bit easier. So the quotient rule is the denominator times itself in the denominator. So the numerator is low d high minus high d low. And then I'm going to distribute the 3 and the negative 3x. So then we're left with that's 21 divided by 5x plus 7 squared. Okay, so now this is the second review sheet in your packet. So for A, f of negative 1 means plug the negative 1 into the original function and find that value. So you can use your calculator. Here, I know if I plug in negative 1, it's going to become positive, so that's 5. And then it's going to be minus 3, minus 7, minus 4, minus 6. So then calculating this, we've got negative 10 and negative 10, which is negative 20, plus the 5, so that's negative 15. Now f prime of x means take the derivative. So I'm going to use the power rule. 4 times 5 is 20. X to the third plus 9x squared minus 14x plus 4. And now C says plug negative 1 into the derivative. So that's going to give me negative 20, positive 9, positive 14 plus 4. Let's see, that's 18. This is going to be negative 11. So we get 7 as our answer. Now f double prime of x is the second derivative. So take the derivative of the derivative. So 3 times 20 is 60. X squared plus 18x minus 14. I did the power rule on the derivative. And now part E, then take negative 1 and plug it into your second derivative. So that's going to be 60 minus 18 minus 14. Okay, so for number 2 here, I typed in some hints. So when we want the equation of the tangent line, we're going to start with point slope form, which I wrote out or I typed out here. So plugging everything into the correct spot, we've got y minus, y1 is going to be the value when you plug in 1 to the original, which is 2 minus 2 plus 1, so that's 1. The slope is when you plug 1 into the derivative, so let's find the derivative function. F prime is 6x squared minus 4x. So when we plug 1 into each x here, That's going to give me a value of 2. And then x1 is our x value that's given. Okay, so for B, for part B, we have to use the graphing calculator and the draw menu to get the equation of the tangent line. It's much easier to do that when you have something like cosine or sine. We could do it by hand. That's possible, but the directions don't say necessarily give an exact answer, and it actually also says you can use your graphing calculator, so why not? So in y1, you're going to type 3 cosine, gives you a parenthesis, 2x, close the parenthesis. And you have to make sure you're in radian mode, because we're going to plug in pi over 3 as our x value. So you're going to graph it. And once you're on your graph, what you're going to do is hit second program, which is the draw menu. Choice 5 is tangent. And then when you get back to your graph, after you've chosen tangent, you're going to type pi divided by 3 and then hit enter. And it's going to give you the equation of the tangent line. Okay, so lastly for number 3, it looks tricky the way it's written, but if we write out for A, let's say, the product rule, because see it's F times G, the product rule says F times G prime plus G times F prime. So since every value in the problem is at 2, I can substitute in the values at what F of 2 is 15, G prime of 2 is 2, G of 2 is -3, and F prime is 8. So I got all of those numbers from the directions up here. So multiplying them together, 30 minus 24, and we get 6 as our value. Do the same thing for B. But now it's a quotient, so that's all over the denominator squared. So it's low d high minus high d low. And substituting in those values, G of 2 is -3, and G, so that's -3 times F prime, which is 8, minus and then F, which is 15, times G prime, which is 2. So then calculating that, I'll go up here, that's -24 minus 30 divided by 9. So that's -54 divided by 9, we get -6. That's a coincidence that this is 6 and this is -6. That has no bearing on each other.